Jake Morrison pressed his face against the cold metal window of the orbital defense station and watched his world die. The blue lights from the alien ships cut through Earth's atmosphere like deadly rain, each beam destroying another piece of humanity. He had been in space for 3 months now, watching helplessly as the Zephyrian Empire turned his home planet into a graveyard. The communication board behind him crackled with desperate voices from the surface. "This is Denver Command. We are under heavy attack, requesting immediate support." The voice cut out in a burst of static. Jake knew there would be no response because there was no support left to send. Every military base, every city, every sign of human civilization was being systematically destroyed by an enemy that came from the stars. Kate Phillips sat in the command center deep beneath the Colorado mountains, her fingers moving across the holographic display that showed the real-time casualty reports. 3 billion dead. The number kept climbing every hour, every minute, every second. She had been an admiral in the Global Defense Force for 20 years, but nothing had prepared her for this. The Zephyrians had arrived 6 months ago with a simple message: surrender or die. Humanity had chosen to fight, and now they were paying the price. The enemy ships were massive, each one the size of a small city. They moved through space with deadly precision, their weapons capable of destroying entire continents with a single shot. The human fleet had lasted exactly 47 minutes against them. Kate remembered watching the battle from this same command center, seeing her ships torn apart like paper in a hurricane. The USS Freedom, the USS Liberty, the USS Constitution, all of them gone in flashes of blue light. Henry Cole stood in his laboratory 3 miles beneath the Nevada desert, watching the screens that showed the destruction above. He had been working on Project Nightfall for 5 years, ever since the first alien signals were detected. The project had been deemed too dangerous, too extreme, too inhumane for conventional warfare. But conventional warfare was over now. The politicians and generals who had called his work madness were dead, killed in the first wave of attacks on Washington and the Pentagon. The project files lay open on his desk, marked with red stamps that read classified and eyes only. Inside were the blueprints for something that could change humanity forever. The serum he had developed could enhance human DNA, merging it with genetic material from Earth's most dangerous predators. The test subjects had shown incredible results. Superhuman strength, enhanced senses, rapid healing, and instincts that were purely predatory. Ryan Bell stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, one of the last surviving ships in Earth's fleet. Through the viewport, he could see the evacuation ships fleeing toward the outer colonies, carrying the few civilians who had managed to escape the planet's surface. Behind them, Earth burned. The blue glow of alien weapons had replaced the natural light of the sun, and the planet's surface was covered in the smoke of burning cities. The Zephyrians had been methodical in their destruction. They had started with the military bases, then the government centers, then the major cities. Now they were working their way through the smaller towns and villages, making sure that no human settlement survived. Their ground forces had landed in 12 locations around the globe, establishing beachheads from which they could complete the systematic extermination of the human race. Lisa Grant received the emergency transmission in her bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains. The message was brief and came directly from the President's emergency shelter. Project Nightfall is authorized. Use any means necessary. The future of humanity depends on it. She had been waiting for this order for months, hoping it would never come. The project was humanity's last desperate gamble, and if it failed, there would be nothing left. The President himself was dead now, killed when the aliens destroyed the White House. The Vice President had lasted another week before his bunker was discovered and destroyed. The Secretary of Defense had made it to the Colorado facility but died in the third wave of attacks. Lisa was now the highest-ranking government official left alive, and the weight of humanity's survival rested on her shoulders. Marcus Webb lay strapped to a metal table in the depths of Site Alpha, the first volunteer for the enhancement process. He had been a Marine before the invasion, serving in conflicts around the world. When the aliens came, he had watched his unit get wiped out in the first battle. Now he was volunteering to become something that was no longer entirely human, something that could fight back against the enemy that had destroyed his world. The serum flowed through tubes into his bloodstream, carrying with it the genetic material of tigers, sharks, eagles, and dozens of other predators. The pain was incredible, like fire burning through every cell in his body. But he could feel himself changing, becoming stronger, faster, more dangerous. His senses sharpened until he could hear the heartbeats of the technicians across the room. His muscles grew denser, his bones harder, his reflexes faster than any human had ever been. Amy Stone led the last group of civilians through the underground tunnels beneath New York City. The surface had been uninhabitable for weeks ever since. The aliens had begun their systematic bombardment. The few survivors moved like ghosts through the ruins of their civilization, hiding from the enemy patrols that hunted them through the streets. The Zephyrians were not just destroying human cities, they were hunting individual humans, their ground. Forces moved through the ruins with advanced sensors, tracking down every survivor and eliminating them. They wore armor that made them look like walking tanks, and their weapons could cut through steel like paper. Against such an enemy, normal humans had no chance. Paul Carter coordinated the global response from his command bunker, watching the tactical displays that showed the locations of the remaining human forces. There were still pockets of resistance around the world, but they were being eliminated one by one. The aliens had superior technology, superior numbers, and superior firepower. In a conventional war, humanity had already lost, but the war was about to become anything but conventional. The files on his desk contained the activation codes for Project Nightfall facilities around the globe. In Australia, Canada, the European Union, and a dozen other locations, volunteers were being prepared for the enhancement process. They would emerge as something new, something that could fight the aliens on equal terms. The transformation had begun. Humanity was about to evolve, not through millions of years of natural selection, but through science and desperation. The 3 billion dead would not have died in vain if the enhanced soldiers could turn the tide of war. Earth was about to unleash its beasts, and the galaxy would never be the same. Henry Cole watched the monitors in Site Alpha as Marcus Webb's body convulsed on the metal table. The enhancement serum was working its way through every cell, rewriting the genetic code that had defined humanity for thousands of years. The readings showed massive changes happening at the molecular level, DNA strands breaking apart and rebuilding themselves into something entirely new. The first change was in Marcus's bone structure. His skeleton began to grow denser, stronger, capable of supporting muscle mass that no human had ever possessed. His ribs expanded to protect organs that were themselves changing, becoming more efficient, more resistant to damage. His skull thickened to protect a brain that was developing new neural pathways at an incredible rate. Marcus screamed as his muscles tore and regrew, each fiber becoming stronger than steel cable. His heart rate spiked to over 200 beats per minute as his cardiovascular system adapted to pump blood through a body that was becoming something between human and apex predator. The pain was beyond description, but he could feel himself becoming something powerful, something dangerous. Amy Stone received the evacuation order while she was still leading civilians through the tunnel system beneath Manhattan. The message was simple: clear the Western territories within 48 hours. The enhanced soldiers would need room to operate, and normal humans would not survive in the same space as the transformed warriors. She looked at the frightened faces around her and wondered what humanity was becoming in its desperate fight for survival. The evacuation ships were already waiting at the emergency landing sites, their cargo holds designed to carry as many people as possible away from the combat zones. Amy helped load families onto the transports, watching children who had never known a world without war climbing aboard vessels that would take them to colonies they had never seen. The lucky ones would survive to see what Earth became after the transformation was complete. Lisa Grant stood in the command center and watched the global activation sequence begin. Facilities in 12 countries were coming online simultaneously, each one beginning the process of creating enhanced soldiers from human volunteers. The screens showed vital signs from hundreds of subjects, their bodies changing in ways that defied everything science had taught about human biology. The first facility to report success was the Australian site, where a volunteer named Craig Thompson had survived the full transformation. The medical readings showed strength levels that were 10 times normal human capacity, reaction times measured in milliseconds, and sensory capabilities that seemed almost supernatural. Craig could see in complete darkness, hear sounds from miles away, and smell individual scents with the precision of a bloodhound. Paul Carter coordinated the deployment from his bunker, watching as the enhanced soldiers began to emerge from their transformation chambers. Each one was different, the serum adapting to their individual genetics and creating unique combinations of predatory traits. Some had developed the strength of great apes, others the speed of cheetahs, and still others the hunting instincts of wolves and sharks. The first enhanced soldier to reach the surface was a woman named Kelly Davis from the Canadian facility. She had been a police officer before the invasion, trained in urban combat and hostage rescue. Now she moved through the ruins of Toronto with fluid grace, her enhanced muscles allowing her to leap between buildings and her improved senses tracking the alien patrols that hunted through the city streets. Marcus Webb opened his eyes for the first time since the transformation began, and the world looked completely different. He could see heat signatures through solid walls, hear the heartbeats of people 3 floors below, and smell the fear of the technicians who were monitoring his vital signs. His body felt like a weapon that had been forged in the fires of evolution. Every muscle and bone designed for one purpose: hunting and killing. Susan Clark studied the biological data streaming in from the enhanced soldiers around the world. The changes were not just physical but mental as well. The subjects were developing pack instincts, communicating through pheromone trails and subsonic vocalizations that normal humans could not detect. They were becoming something new, something that thought and acted more like predatory animals than civilized humans. The first combat test came when Troy Adams led a squad of enhanced soldiers against a Zephyrian patrol in the ruins of Los Angeles. The alien soldiers were 9 feet tall, armored in biometal that could deflect conventional weapons, and armed with energy rifles that could cut through tank armor. They had been unstoppable against normal human forces, but the enhanced soldiers were not normal humans. Troy moved with impossible speed, his enhanced reflexes allowing him to dodge energy blasts that would have killed any normal person. His squad spread out in a coordinated hunting pattern, using tactics that seemed more animal than human. They stalked the alien patrol for 20 minutes, learning their movement patterns and identifying weaknesses in their armor. The attack lasted less than 30 seconds. The enhanced soldiers struck from multiple directions simultaneously, their superhuman strength allowing them to tear through alien armor with their bare hands. The Zephyrians fired their weapons frantically, but the enhanced soldiers moved too fast, their improved reflexes making them nearly impossible to hit. Kelly Davis reported the first successful elimination of an alien ground unit, her voice calm and controlled despite the violence she had just unleashed. The enhanced soldiers were not just stronger and faster than normal humans, they were also developing a coldness, a predatory detachment that allowed them to kill without hesitation or remorse. The Zephyrian ground commander received the reports from his patrol units with growing confusion. His forces had been trained to fight humans, slow and fragile creatures who relied on technology and teamwork to overcome their physical limitations. These new opponents were something else entirely, moving with the speed and precision of wild animals while retaining the intelligence and tactical awareness of human soldiers. Ben Rogers led his enhanced squad through the sewers beneath Chicago, tracking a Zephyrian supply convoy that was moving through the city center. His improved senses could detect the alien scent from miles away, and his enhanced hearing allowed him to track their movement through the urban maze above. The hunt was about to begin, and the aliens had no idea what was coming for them. The transformation was spreading faster than anyone had expected. The enhanced soldiers were not just adapting to their new abilities. They were evolving in real time, developing new capabilities in response to combat situations. Some had grown additional sensory organs, others had developed natural camouflage, and a few had begun to communicate telepathically with their pack members. Henry Cole realized that they had unleashed something that could not be controlled or contained. The enhanced soldiers were becoming apex predators, and Earth was their hunting ground. The question was no longer whether humanity could survive the alien invasion, but whether humanity would survive its own transformation. The Zephyrian ground commander stood in his command center aboard the massive warship, staring at the tactical displays that showed his forces being systematically destroyed across the planet. For the first time in his military career, he felt something he had never experienced before: fear. The humans had become something else, something that hunted his soldiers with the efficiency of natural predators. The reports coming in from the surface made no sense according to everything the Zephyrian Empire knew about human capabilities. Individual humans were tearing through squads of his best soldiers, moving with speed that defied their previous understanding of human biology. Energy weapons that could melt steel had no effect on these new opponents, who seemed to heal from wounds that should have been fatal. Ben Rogers crouched on the rooftop of a destroyed building in downtown Chicago, watching the alien convoy move. Through the streets below, his enhanced vision could see the heat signatures of the Zephyrian soldiers inside their armored vehicles, and his improved hearing picked up their alien language as they communicated with each other. They had no idea they were being hunted by something that could track them across the entire city. His squad of enhanced soldiers spread out across the surrounding buildings, moving with the silent coordination of a wolf pack. They communicated through pheromone trails that only they could detect, sharing information about enemy positions and movement patterns without making a sound. The transformation had given them abilities that went far beyond simple physical enhancement. Carol Foster watched the global tactical display from her command center, tracking the movements of hunter-killer teams across 6 continents. The enhanced soldiers were operating in small packs, using hit-and-run tactics that kept the enemy off balance and constantly afraid. They would appear from nowhere, strike with overwhelming violence, and vanish before reinforcements could arrive. The alien ground forces had tried to adapt their tactics, but the enhanced soldiers seemed to anticipate every move. They had developed an almost supernatural understanding of battlefield dynamics, able to predict enemy behavior and exploit weaknesses that no normal human would have noticed. The hunters were becoming the hunted, and the Zephyrians were learning what it meant to be prey. Mike Johnson felt the changes continuing to happen inside his body as his squad prepared for their next mission. The enhancement serum was still evolving, adapting to combat conditions in ways that the scientists had never predicted. His night vision had improved to the point where he could see clearly in complete darkness, and his sense of smell had become so acute that he could track individual aliens across miles of urban terrain. The transformation was not just physical, but mental as well. Mike found himself thinking in ways that were more animal than human, his mind processing information about territory, pack dynamics, and hunting strategies with an efficiency that surprised him. He was becoming something that was perfectly designed for warfare, a living weapon that could adapt to any combat situation. Danny White led his enhanced unit through the underground tunnels beneath New York City, following the scent trail of a Zephyrian command post that had been established in the subway system. The aliens had tried to create a secure bunker network, but they had not counted on enemies who could smell their fear through solid rock and hear their heartbeats from hundreds of yards away. The enhanced soldiers moved through spaces that would have been impossible for normal humans to navigate, their improved flexibility and strength allowing them to squeeze through collapsed tunnels and climb vertical shafts with ease. They were becoming something that was perfectly adapted to urban warfare, able to use the destroyed cityscape as a hunting ground. Henry Cole studied the latest biological reports with a mixture of fascination and concern. The enhanced soldiers were continuing to evolve at an accelerated rate, developing new abilities that went far beyond what the original serum had been designed to create. Some had grown additional sensory organs. Others had developed natural camouflage abilities, and a few had begun to communicate telepathically with their pack members. The data showed that the enhanced soldiers were not just adapting to their environment but actively changing it to suit their needs. They were marking territory with pheromone trails that only they could detect, creating communication networks that spanned entire cities, and establishing hunting grounds that they defended with lethal efficiency. Amy Stone watched from the safety of the orbital evacuation ships as the enhanced soldiers began their counteroffensive against the alien ground forces. The war that had seemed lost just weeks ago was now turning in humanity's favor, but the cost of victory was becoming clear. The enhanced soldiers were no longer entirely human, and the question remained whether they would remember their humanity. Once the war was over, the Zephyrian forces that had seemed invincible were now trapped on Earth's surface, hunted by predators that seemed to know their every move. The aliens had tried to retreat to their landing zones, but the enhanced soldiers had cut off their escape routes and were systematically eliminating every enemy unit they could find. Troy Adams received new orders from Earth Command as his squad completed another successful hunt. The enhanced soldiers were no longer content with simply defending human territory. They were actively seeking out and destroying every alien presence on the planet. The defensive war was becoming an offensive campaign, and the aliens were learning that they had awakened something that would not stop until every invader was dead. The transformation was spreading beyond the original volunteers. The enhanced soldiers were somehow passing their abilities to other humans through direct contact, creating a growing population of apex predators that saw the planet as their hunting ground. The genetic changes were becoming permanent, irreversible alterations to human DNA that would affect future generations. Paul Carter coordinated the global hunt from his command bunker, watching as the enhanced soldiers began to dominate every theater of operations. The aliens who had conquered dozens of worlds were now facing an enemy that was perfectly adapted to hunt them, and they were losing badly. The question was no longer whether humanity would survive, but whether the aliens would escape Earth alive. The enhanced soldiers had become something that was beyond human understanding, creatures that combined human intelligence with the predatory instincts of Earth's most dangerous animals. They were the perfect warriors, designed by evolution and enhanced by science to be the ultimate apex predators. The war was about to enter a new phase, one where the hunters would pursue their prey across the galaxy itself. The Zephyrian War Council convened in the massive command chamber aboard their flagship, the assembled military leaders staring at holographic displays that showed the complete collapse of their ground operations. High Commander Zethkar had conquered 17 worlds in his career, but nothing had prepared him for what was happening on Earth. The humans had become something that his empire had never encountered before. The tactical reports showed impossible things. Individual human soldiers were destroying entire squads of Zephyrian warriors, moving through solid rock as if it were air, and tracking their forces across continents with precision that defied all known biology. The enhanced humans seemed to know exactly where every alien unit was located. Striking with perfect timing and overwhelming force, Danny White emerged from the subway tunnels beneath Manhattan, his enhanced senses detecting the alien command post 3 blocks away. His squad had been hunting this particular group for 6 hours, following their scent trail through the underground maze of the destroyed city. The aliens had tried to mask their presence, but they could not hide from predators who could smell fear itself. The Zephyrian soldiers in the command post had barricaded themselves inside a reinforced bunker, their energy weapons aimed at every entrance. They had learned to fear the silence that came before the enhanced humans attacked, the deadly quiet that meant death was approaching. But their weapons and armor were useless against enemies who could tear through steel with their bare hands. Henry Cole watched the transformation data with growing amazement and concern. The enhanced soldiers were evolving beyond anything his original design had intended. Some had developed echolocation abilities that allowed them to navigate in complete darkness. Others had grown additional sensory organs that could detect electromagnetic fields, and a few had begun to phase shift through solid matter. The biological reports showed that the enhanced soldiers were no longer bound by normal human limitations. They could survive in vacuum for short periods, withstand temperatures that would kill any normal person and heal from injuries that should have been fatal. They were becoming something that was perfectly adapted to hunt and kill. Regardless of the environment or enemy, Amy Stone monitored the orbital surveillance feeds from her command ship, watching as the enhanced soldiers began their final assault on the alien landing zones. The Zephyrian forces had retreated to their heavily fortified bases, but the enhanced humans were not deterred by walls or energy barriers. They moved through the defensive perimeters like ghosts, striking at the heart of enemy positions with surgical precision. The aliens had tried to evacuate their wounded and non-essential personnel, but the enhanced soldiers had cut off all escape routes. Every transport ship that attempted to leave the planet was tracked and destroyed, not by human technology but by enhanced soldiers who could leap into orbit and tear apart spacecraft with their bare hands. Mike Johnson felt the final stage of his transformation beginning as his squad prepared for the assault on the Los Angeles landing zone. The enhancement serum had reached a critical mass in his bloodstream, triggering changes that made his previous abilities seem primitive by comparison. His strength had increased to the point where he could lift objects weighing several tons, and his speed allowed him to move faster than the human eye could follow. The mental changes were even more dramatic. Mike found himself thinking with the collective intelligence of his pack, sharing thoughts and sensations with the other enhanced soldiers around the globe. They were becoming a single organism, a global predator that hunted with perfect coordination and shared awareness. Carol Foster coordinated the worldwide assault from her command center, watching as enhanced soldier units struck at alien positions simultaneously across 6 continents. The timing was perfect, as if every unit knew exactly when to attack for maximum effect. The aliens were being overwhelmed by an enemy that seemed to anticipate their every move. The Zephyrian ground forces began their emergency evacuation procedures, but it was already too late. The enhanced soldiers had surrounded every landing zone, cutting off access to the transport ships that could carry them to safety. The aliens who had once hunted humans through the ruins of Earth were now trapped on the surface, hunted by predators that showed no mercy. Ben Rogers led his pack through the ruins of Chicago, tracking the last group of alien survivors toward the lake shore. The Zephyrians were moving in a tight formation, their weapons sweeping the area for any sign of the enhanced soldiers. They had learned to fear the silence. The moment when all sound stopped and death approached on silent feet, the enhanced soldiers had developed new hunting strategies that combined human intelligence with predatory instincts. They would herd their prey toward specific locations, cut off escape routes, and strike when the enemy was most vulnerable. The hunt had become an art form, practiced by creatures that were perfectly designed for killing. Troy Adams received the final assault orders as his squad prepared to storm the alien command ship that had landed in the Nevada desert. The massive vessel was defended by energy shields and automated weapon systems, but the enhanced soldiers had learned to phase through energy barriers and disable technology with their bare hands. The assault began at exactly midnight, with enhanced soldier units striking at alien positions around the globe. The coordinated attack was so precise that it seemed impossible, but the enhanced soldiers had developed a form of shared consciousness that allowed them to act as a single organism with thousands of bodies. Susan Clark analyzed the combat data streaming in from the battlefield, watching as the enhanced soldiers demonstrated abilities that defied every known law of physics and biology. They were moving through solid matter, manipulating energy fields, and communicating across vast distances without any technological assistance. They had become something that was beyond human comprehension. The Zephyrian War Council watched their forces being systematically destroyed, their 1,000-year empire crumbling in the face of an enemy that had evolved beyond their ability to understand or defeat. The humans had not just survived the attempted extermination, they had transformed into something that was perfectly designed to hunt and kill their would-be conquerors. Paul Carter observed the final phase of the counteroffensive from his command bunker, watching as the enhanced soldiers began boarding alien spacecraft and hunting their crews through the corridors of their own ships. The war was no longer taking place on Earth's surface but in the void of space itself. Where enhanced humans pursued their prey among the stars, the transformation was complete. Humanity had evolved into something that was no longer bound by the limitations of their original biology. They were apex predators in the truest sense, creatures that could hunt across any environment and adapt to any threat. The galaxy was about to learn what it meant to face Earth's ultimate predators. 6 months after the activation of Project Nightfall, the last Zephyrian transport ships fled Earth's orbit in panic, their hulls scarred by the claws and teeth of enhanced soldiers who had pursued them into the vacuum of space. High Commander Zethkar transmitted the final evacuation order to his scattered fleet, his voice shaking with a fear that his species had never known before. The humans had become something that defied every law of nature and warfare. Kate Phillips stood in the rebuilt command center, watching the retreating alien ships disappear into hyperspace. The orbital displays showed Earth's surface for the first time in months without the blue glow of enemy weapons. The planet was scarred and broken. Its cities reduced to rubble, but it was free. The cost had been terrible, but humanity had survived by becoming something entirely new. The enhanced soldiers began returning from their final hunts, moving through the ruins of the great cities with the fluid grace of apex predators. They had evolved far beyond the original design of Project Nightfall, developing abilities that seemed more like magic than science. Some could phase through solid matter, others could manipulate energy fields with their minds, and all of them shared a collective consciousness that spanned the globe. Marcus Webb stood on the observation deck of the space station, looking down at the world he had helped to save. His transformation had been the first, but he was no longer unique. Thousands of enhanced soldiers now walked the Earth, their numbers growing as the genetic changes spread to their offspring. The children born to enhanced soldiers showed abilities that surpassed even their parents, as if evolution itself was accelerating to create the perfect predator. Henry Cole published his final report on Project Nightfall, documenting the complete transformation of human evolution. The enhanced soldiers had not just gained physical abilities. They had developed new forms of consciousness that allowed them to think and act as a single organism, while maintaining their individual identities. They were becoming something that was both human and more than human. The data showed that the changes were irreversible and hereditary. The enhanced soldiers would pass their abilities to their children, who would in turn evolve even further. Humanity was diverging into two separate species, with the enhanced soldiers representing the next stage of human evolution. The question was whether normal humans would survive alongside their transformed cousins. Paul Carter oversaw the establishment of the new Earth Defense Force, composed entirely of enhanced soldiers and their descendants. The old military structure was obsolete, replaced by pack-based units that operated with perfect coordination and shared awareness. The enhanced soldiers needed no formal chain of command because they could communicate directly through their collective consciousness. The new defense force was unlike anything that had ever existed in human history. The enhanced soldiers could operate in any environment, from the depths of the ocean to the vacuum of space. They could hunt across star systems, pursuing enemies through hyperspace itself. They were becoming the guardians of humanity, but they were also becoming something that normal humans could barely understand. Lisa Grant received reports from the colonial worlds, where enhanced soldiers had begun arriving to establish new territories. The transformation was spreading beyond Earth, carried by enhanced soldiers who could survive the journey between stars without technological assistance. They were seeding new worlds with their presence, creating a network of predator planets that would protect human interests across the galaxy. The enhanced soldiers had developed a territorial instinct that extended far beyond Earth's boundaries. They saw the entire galaxy as their hunting ground, and they were determined to protect it from any threat that might arise. The Zephyrian Empire had been the first to learn this lesson, but they would not be the last. Jake Morrison watched the construction of the new orbital defense platforms, structures that were built and maintained by enhanced soldiers who could work in the vacuum of space without protection. The platforms were not just defensive installations but hunting bases, designed to track and eliminate any threat that approached. Earth's solar system, the enhanced soldiers had begun modifying the orbital structures with their own genetic material, creating living ships that could think and act independently. The boundary between technology and biology was disappearing as the enhanced soldiers merged their abilities with human engineering to create something entirely new. Amy Stone led the first expedition beyond the solar system, her ship crewed entirely by enhanced soldiers who could navigate through hyperspace using senses that no normal human possessed. They were heading toward the Zephyrian home system, not to conquer but to deliver a message. The galaxy needed to understand what Earth had become. The enhanced soldiers could survive in environments that would kill any normal creature, and they could adapt to new threats faster than any enemy could develop countermeasures. They were becoming the ultimate expression of evolutionary pressure, creatures that could thrive in any situation and overcome any obstacle. Troy Adams established the first off-world hunting preserve on a planet in the Alpha Centauri system, where enhanced soldiers could practice their skills against alien wildlife. The planet became a training ground for the next generation of predators, a place where human children could learn to hunt among the stars. The enhanced soldiers were no longer content to remain on Earth. They were spreading throughout the galaxy, establishing territories and marking hunting grounds on dozens of worlds. They were becoming a galactic species, one that saw the entire universe as their domain. Susan Clark studied the genetic data from the enhanced soldiers' offspring, watching as each generation developed new abilities that surpassed their parents. The children could manipulate matter at the molecular level, communicate across vast distances without technology, and adapt to any environment within hours of exposure. They were becoming something that transcended the traditional boundaries of life itself. The final transmission from Earth was broadcast to every corner of the galaxy, carried by enhanced soldiers who could travel faster than light using abilities that defied conventional physics. The message was simple and direct, delivered by Kate Phillips in her new role as Admiral of the Terran Apex Force. The transmission reached every inhabited world, every space station, every ship that traveled between the stars. It was heard by species that had never encountered humans, by civilizations that thought themselves safe in the depths of space, by empires that believed they were untouchable. The message changed everything. The age of human weakness was over. The galaxy now belonged to Earth's apex predators, creatures that had evolved beyond the limitations of biology and technology. They were the guardians of humanity and the hunters of the cosmos, and they would protect their territory with a ferocity that no alien species could match. The beasts had been unleashed, and the universe would never be the same.